You know that famous tunnel of light people talk about, the one they see when they have a brush with death? Have you ever wondered what's really going on there? Is it actually a peek into the afterlife, or is it something a little more biological? Well, we're going to dig in and find out what's happening when your brain thinks it's about to check out. And it all starts with this fantastic question from Patrick. He had, let's just say, a very dramatic run-in with some sourdough toast. He saw the whole thing, the tunnel, his late great-aunt Martha waving at him from a garden, the whole shebang. And his question really gets to the core of it all. Was that a spiritual journey or just a biological glitch?
So what Patrick went through, it actually has a name. It's called a near-death experience, or NDE for short. And, it's a lot more common than you might think. But here's what's truly fascinating. These deeply personal, seemingly one-of-a-kind experiences, they almost always follow the exact same predictable script.
Yeah, this script is so common that researchers have actually mapped it out. It's almost like a 5-act play that the brain puts on when it thinks the final curtain is about to drop. According to Dr. Moody, who really pioneered this field, the playbook goes something like this. First, you get hit with this sudden, intense feeling of peace. Then comes that really bizarre sensation of floating outside your own body. Up next, our famous tunnel, often with cameos from deceased relatives. After that, your life flashes before your eyes, and the grand finale is moving toward this warm, welcoming light. Sound familiar to anyone? Now, for the longest time, the only explanations for this were spiritual. But what if the answer isn't somewhere up in the heavens, but right here, inside our own heads? Let's take a look at the science, which points to something that's a lot more like a biological low battery warning. So you've basically got two competing theories on the table. On one hand, there's theory A, which suggests the tunnel is some kind of subconscious memory of being born. It's a really poetic idea, but it has some problems. And then you've got theory B, which is way more direct. It's just a hardware glitch. Your brain's cortex is literally running out of oxygen. Yeah, that whole memory of birth thing sounds nice, but it kind of falls apart pretty fast when you think about it. Turns out, being born isn't like gliding down a gentle waterslide with your eyes wide open, taking in the sights. It's a much more chaotic and squished event than that. So that theory doesn't really hold water. And here's the real kicker. You don't actually have to be near death to have a near-death experience. Fighter pilots report seeing the exact same tunnel when they pull extreme G-forces. Why? Because it drains the blood and the oxygen right out of their brains. You can even trigger similar effects with certain psychedelics. The common thread here isn't dying, it's oxygen loss. Okay, so let's zoom in on the most iconic part of the NDE, the thing everyone talks about, that tunnel. If it's not a magical gateway to the great beyond, what in the world is it? Well, the answer isn't in some mystical textbook. It's in the biological wiring of your brain and your eyes. It's not a spiritual passage at all. It's a biological failure cascade. Let me show you how it works. It all comes down to how your brain handles vision. See, it dedicates a massive amount of brain power, neurons, to your sharp central vision. Your blurry peripheral vision, not so much. So when your brain starts to starve for oxygen, it has to make some tough calls. It starts cutting power to the non-essentials first. And guess what's on that list? The neurons for your peripheral vision. As they start shutting down from the outside in, your field of vision literally collapses, leaving just that little circle of light in the center. And voila, there's your tunnel. All right, so the tunnel is a vision glitch. Case closed on that one. But what about that other really weird part? That feeling of floating above your own body, watching the whole scene from the ceiling like a ghost? What's that about? I mean, this is one of the most compelling parts of the NDE story, right? People report these incredibly detailed things they saw from a perspective they couldn't possibly have had. It's so convincing that a doctor named Holden decided to put it to the ultimate test in a really clever way. Dr. Holden's experiment was just brilliant. She went into operating rooms and placed hidden objects on top of tall cabinets, things you could only see if you were actually floating up by the ceiling. Over the course of her study, she talked to tons of patients who swore they had this exact out-of-body experience. And the result? Not one. Not a single patient could ever tell her what the hidden object was. In fact, some of the visions were just flat-out impossible. One patient was absolutely convinced he saw the famous French soccer player Ribéry in the operating room, wearing a Brazil jersey. That, of course, could never happen. What this really suggests is that these are complex hallucinations, probably caused by a glitch in a part of the brain called the temporoparietal junction, which is basically your brain's GPS for figuring out where you are in space. So, let's bring this all home. We've untangled the mystery of the tunnel, we've looked at the out-of-body experience. So what does this all mean for our friend Patrick and his near-death experience by sourdough?
Well, Patrick, the science is pretty clear on this one. That vision of your great Aunt Martha, it probably wasn't a call from the other side. It was a distress signal. It meant your brain's cortex was panicking and running critically low on oxygen, thanks to that piece of toast. Your brain was just doing what it does best. It was telling you a story, using characters and places from its own memory banks.
Look, knowing the neurology behind all this offers an absolutely fascinating peek into the weird and wonderful ways our brains work. But let's be honest, it's not going to save you from the inevitable. So I guess the final takeaway is this. You'll certainly die smarter, but let's be real, you're still going to die anyway.
With that, you'll certainly die smarter, but you'll still die. But before you do, don't forget to like the video and subscribe.